Welcome to Break Everything. Your host, Lisa L. Levy, will guide you through critical thought conversations and a journey of directed disruption that makes a difference. Experience bold conversations with industry leaders who are willing to challenge the status quo.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Break Everything. I am excited today to have Steve McKeon with us. He is known as Mac, and he is the founder of MacGyverTech with over 25 years of experience in the technological world. He has a passion for taking things apart, putting them back together, and making them better than they were before. His knowledge of software development extends from a passion of reverse engineering, ethical hacking, and new technologies. Mac's philosophy on software is that no company should be forced to use out-of-the-box solutions. He believes each company is unique and requires fully customized software to fit their specific needs. His passion for new technology is laser focused on blockchain, from smart contracts to NFTs to cryptocurrency to supply chain management. The applications for blockchain are unlimited. With a growing need for these technologies, MacGyverTech is poised to help meet those demands. The US-based development team is growing quickly, and Mac continually locates the best teammates to help create, construct, and secure the highest quality custom software available. Mac, I am so happy to have you here today, and my audience might be a little confused of why I have a technologist on a healthcare podcast, but we're going to have some fun bringing the technology to healthcare.
Well, I'll try to make it as easy as possible, and I'll try to make it so everybody can understand what the core value of what some of these technologies are that are on the horizon, to pretty much touching in almost every industry that's on the planet.
And I think that that's the beautiful thing with where you're playing and the things that drive you, that the technologies are absolutely enabling to any industry, and it's finding the right way to make the impact.
Absolutely. Well, it's just tying things together much more efficiently and more seamlessly, I see, is like more of the bigger advantages some of these technologies can bring.
Absolutely. Before we get into that, let's let the audience get to know you a little bit, Mac. Sure. Tell us about your background and how you found yourself in the role that you are, really being disruptive in any industry that will bring you into it.
Sure.
How'd you get here?
So I've been taking things apart my whole life. Started when I was 2 years old. So your show's perfect example. I break everything and I basically void warranties, and I've been doing it for a long time. And honestly, there's a lot to be learned in that kind of way of looking at things. And I just don't look at the lens that like everybody else does and tries to go on the beaten path. I'm always making a right turn, looking at all the other options, seeing how to kind of solve a problem in a different way. And I just kind of have a knack for it. I love doing that kind of stuff and solving problems. So I don't know. I break things and void warranties.
I love the voiding warranties. It's a really important distinction to put in there.
But there's certain things I can't. But there's a lot through my career. I bet that. And my career. So I've been in IT and software for 25 years. I did a lot of R&D and prototyping. I generally am comfortable in doing stuff that other people might have failed at or a little challenging problems. And I just generally like doing the right thing for the right reasons as well. So.
And right in the bio, in the intro, we talk about the ethical hacking, right? There's a part of you like to take things apart and put them back together, but the piece about making it better is important.
Absolutely. I mean, there's always something to be said of like seeing how things are, and just like you see, the natural evolution, even technology in itself is getting faster and better and quicker. It's like just I don't know. I just like to see if we can do things a little bit better. And a lot of times when I've taken things apart, I always see things, and initially I had a lot of extra parts, and I thought, I guess they weren't needed. But, in some senses, why were they there in certain purposes? And some things, there's business decisions that out trump some of the engineering decisions. But to me, it kind of defeats the purpose if you're trying to solve a problem and making it better.
And so with the work that you do, MacGyverTech is a software development company.
Correct. We are a software development company. Correct.
Yeah, and you are solving business problems in a bespoke, custom way for each client.
Correct. So like some of our clients are like Anheuser beer distributors, manufacturers, fabricators, the companies that have lots of things or parts. We really do well with tying their inventory, their accounting, like all their systems, and making it much more efficient for them to operate and be, the efficiency is really important in those types of companies. So we try to give them software that'll give them that edge on that, and custom built. They don't have to kind of try to put a square peg in a round hole kind of thing. because that's what a lot of software companies do is they try to rinse and repeat and kind of have a repeating model where we kind of do it in the other way. We build the company exactly what they need and it's a glove fit so they can develop the process as they see fit, not as like the software is forcing them to do.
And I find that interesting myself coming from a technology background, right? How we cycle through things. Going back 20 years, solutions were custom.
Correct.
And they became very big, very arduous, and it became easier to have something sort of that baseline, and then we configure it out of the box. And
Sure.
There are a lot of compromises in that approach.
Sure. But here's the thing is we're in a golden age of software. Things have come a massively long way since I've even started my career, and things that were almost impossible are almost like open source. You can download a couple lines of code. You can have an up and running framework for all different types of things. There's a plethora of information and videos out there. So if you really want to know about something or technology, it's a great time. I mean, you can do a lot of great stuff with a little bit of work. Granted, you still have to solve a lot of problems, but what you couldn't do before with a lot of that, like you said, I know where you're coming from. That has kind of been reduced to a much easier kind of thing. There's frameworks that help with that kind of stuff. We're basically building on top of shoulders of giants. So using technologies of the past and building better things that kind of help support those. So it's like a bit of evolution in software, and that's exponentially getting better and fragmenting in all different kind of fields. Like, it used to be like the IT guys could also do software, but that's no longer the case. Software is completely separate from IT. And then even in the software world now, that's even segmenting in front end developers, back end developers, and database developers. So it's like, it's just these growing, constantly evolving kind of ecosystems of technology. But it's really at a point now where I'm seeing you can build really amazing things for companies.
And that's absolutely fantastic. And when we first met in our first conversation, you were talking about some of the custom work that you've done in the past in the healthcare space.
Correct.
Which brings us to the podcast. But with that, what were some of those opportunities that you were seeing that where software can start to help in the healthcare space?
Sure. Yeah. So a few years ago, we worked on a medical billing CRM system. So we got to work with a lot of healthcare hospital systems. And I really saw a lot of inefficiencies, and especially in the communications in between that. There's really none. And pulling information is an arduous task sometimes. It could take days, if not a week, for somebody to pull like a medical records. If you're using something like blockchain or some more modern technology, that could be instant. So, I mean, those are the types of things where I think there could be massive improvements in, the healthcare industry, just from my experience of dealing with it for a few years.
Absolutely. So one of your passions is blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's dig a little bit deeper with blockchain in healthcare. Are there specific use cases that speak to you or stand out to you that would be really great places to start lifting that industry into the cutting edge technology solutions that we could be creating?
I mean, easier access to the medical records, like I was mentioning a few minutes ago. I think using some kind of NFT, if nobody knows what that means, it's actually a blockchain product or an entity that lives on, the blockchain technology. But you can actually kind of almost like use it as a validator and stamp like an image or a piece of media along with the blockchain and kind of like bypassing a third party to validate or authenticate it. To me, that could be useful for having access to your medical records and say, hey, I get an accident, I have an app on my phone, I can immediately pull them up and they can be available for like a triage situation for a car accident, where that can happen, but it takes a little bit of time, especially if your medical records are in a smaller or a different hospital system. Mm-hmm. And, I could see all these inefficiencies in there. And this is from this firsthand, from my limited experience there. So I think, this making frictionless data between the customer and the people that really need it, or actually the end user, not the customer.
Well, and the customer is, it is an end user and a customer probably all in one when we're talking about our own medical information. And, it's an interesting use case because if we stop and think about today, my doctor has some of my records and a different doctor has some of my other records. And if they happen to both use the same medical record system, those records may actually be available together.
That's somewhat of a possibility, but not guaranteed. That's for sure.
And then all of the other stuff that isn't in that system, right? So using the blockchain approach and using NFT, it becomes about me and not about any one system. It's my data, and it's now sort of, correct me if I'm saying this wrong, but it would be a universal solution. I'm not tied to Cerner or McKesson or whatever the software brand is, because it's in my NFT and it's me.
Correct. Yeah, that's
Wow.
where it's basically almost like a pie in the sky database. I think of it like an Excel spreadsheet that everybody has access to that could be manipulated and updated, but not one person owns it except for the person who owns the data or the private key, which would be the end user or the customer, as we mentioned. So, I mean, to me, I think it like kind of flips it on its head where one, these companies are no longer liable or responsible for managing that data, which we know how responsible they've all been. Every single company's been hacked on the planet. So, that's been successful from that standpoint. So to me, I think those types of problems will go away. And cryptocurrency or blockchain, it starts with the highest level encryption we know. So, it's like this is already security inherently built in. So it's really the next evolution of the internet. They're calling it Web 3.0 for a reason, because Web 2.0 is what we have now, whereas basically the internet of information, but this is the internet of value and data, and a way of controlling that in a very meaningful way. It's just a layer that sits on top of the next net, the internet. So you're going to see much more of those types of things really starting to take off. Even right now, I mean, it's become pretty. I'm sure you can just open up anywhere on the news, you're going to see or hear something about Bitcoin in a good or bad way.
Absolutely. And so I just want to come back to that point in there, from a protection of the data, the security of the data living in a blockchain environment is greater than anything that we probably have in any of the systems that are giving us our HIPAA coverage. But this is that, and then some exponentially greater security.
Yeah, I mean, and it's basically can't be modified or changed either. That's a really unique feature where, you can't change the information that's stored on it. It's a one-way street. It just keeps adding new information. So that has some value to it too. So where companies have been notorious, where some like emails, quote unquote, go in the past, or data went missing, those types of problems, they'll never happen because the blockchain is completely public as well. You might not be able to read some information if it's encrypted or it's a hash code, but that can be followed back in certain ways, and it can be held accountable, and it's basically validating as well. It's a really cool feature of that, and it's really anti-fragile, meaning these are really resilient systems. It would take a lot of the internet and power to go away in the world for these systems to fail.
And to kind of dig into that a little bit more, to make the point about what that means, it's distributed across in small bites in multiple places, the same information. There's a redundancy to it, but nothing is all in one place. And to my limited knowledge, it's more in the intent of what the internet was supposed to be.
100%. Right now, what happened is a consolidation of all the internet and software companies. There's really about 4 players out there, and they own almost all the software companies, and it's big consolidated. Well, with this model, those types of companies probably won't be too successful in the future, because the business model forces you in blockchain, forces you to play along in a fair, transparent field where it's a system that people use. It's not a company driven by ego or profit for itself.
Yeah.
So that's
From your
cool.
perspective, it is pretty cool, and it's still right. I'm still learning and trying to process it, and I know the audience that we're growing for this podcast is probably going, "What are we talking about today?" But I think that it's the future.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
I think it's the future is what we're trying. What I'm trying to tease out is this possibility of decentralized improvement to data, higher level quality of control, and for each individual having pure, complete access to their data and their information.
Sure.
Matt, what do you see as the opportunities? That was one use case. What else have you got?
Yeah, I mean, here's another thing too that's really evolving in the blockchain space. They're called DAOs, or decentralized organizations, and they have a governance and even a voting system where not only now you have those NFTs where you're proving your record, you can approve and vote towards, like, where's my money going for taxes, or where's my money going for this. You actually can use the entire blockchain system for that whole entire governance and voting, and it will facilitate any of the actions automatically. That's why they call it a decentralized autonomous organization. Basically, that can replace companies and governments.
Wow. I'm not sure that I got all of that.
Honestly, and see, those won't be driven by a staff that doesn't need to be
Mhm.
paid. So these are really artificial intelligence that's programmable in some senses.
And so, the introduction, we haven't talked about, artificial intelligence in this space, but it's sort of that next step of how we then automate and scale these ideas so that it is decentralized.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
automation part's important, especially for what it allows us is multiple companies to work together under one system and be more
Okay.
efficient in that way. Because over time we've created all these other disparate systems that kind of been hodgepodge. But
Mhm.
these systems, like that's why most people have a hard time with blockchain because it's many things in one, and it solves a lot of problems. And you need to understand them at a high level. And I've been involved in it 7 years, and I'm still learning and barely treading water. So it's great though. I mean, because I think honestly, this is going to solve a lot of the hacking issues that we have.
Mhm.
Have a much more transparent, fair money systems because I think our money systems right now are a little bit wacky. I'm sure everybody would agree. So I think it has a lot of benefits for fairness and transparency of your data, and also monetizing your own data. Like you could sell your data for research or anything like that instead of like these companies just taking your data and using it for their profit.
Absolutely, because we then as individuals, we're actually in control of our data in a way
100%.
that we aren't today.
We're really not. I mean, one big example of that, all that, like, I think there's DNA sites. I don't want to mention any names where you kind of put the swab, you send it out. Well, they don't tell you. You sign off. They're selling your data
Mhm.
as soon as you do it. You get the benefit of seeing a nice little chart of where you are, but they're benefiting from all the genome pools of they basically pulling up that data and using it and selling it en masse to make money. Instead of that being the case, it's your data. Why can't you benefit from it? So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that is, I hadn't even thought about that. The reality of having actual control of our medical data for our health and wellness, but then what we do and how we use it, and that it actually is monetizable. And
Just
we
like
can
the
choose
Facebook
to,
accounts, they're being monetized, but for Facebook's benefit. In the
right.
future, there's already decentralized social networks like Facebook and Twitter that are being created on the blockchain that the user is incentivized by things like even like YouTube and TikTok. Those companies make majority of the profits, but when you don't have a company that's bound by like people that need to be paid or driven by making profits, and you just have to pay a system, the cost of running that goes way down.
Yeah.
So it's basically all about automation.
It is. And one of the things, I mean, we're talking around it, but haven't necessarily said it directly, right? All of this takes away business. This disruption that we're talking about right
Right.
now that gives us so much power as an individual is going to disrupt the software industry from a healthcare perspective. There are a lot of places that are going to resist this idea.
Sure, but I mean, the thing is with the blockchain technologies is somebody who's been in technology for 25 years and seen it. Actually, I've seen the dot-com bubble and growth of that,
Mhm.
what happened before the Googles and the
Yep.
Amazons. And this is kind of similar like that, but it's much faster. To put it in perspective, I did some like research and it's trying to figure out like what is the fastest known technology that the world has ever known. I don't know if you really know what this is or not, but right now, I guess, well, back up a few years, it has been the internet. The internet grows about 66% year over year. That's pretty damn good.
It
But
is.
blockchain and cryptocurrencies are growing 113% a year over year.
Wow.
So it's doubling the speed of the internet at growth.
Yes.
And I've never seen so much technology and focus going from one place to another. Like all the people in AI are being sucked into blockchain. All the people in all these other technologies are going right into the blockchain space. Uh, it's just amazing to see all this funneling of people moving to a new kind of industry, I guess.
That's fantastic. So with each guest, I ask, the one question that is, if I gave you a magic wand, and with the magic wand, there are absolutely no constraints. I remove the constraints of time, cost, money. You can do anything. What would you do for the healthcare industry?
Well, I'd put them on blockchain and might have one universal system that they can basically all communicate and be more frictionless between each other. That would just benefit everybody. Right now, it's too
And
siloed.
break it down, right? What does that universal platform look like? What all is housed in that?
So I'd like to see easy access for your health records, and that the user is getting benefited for that if they're sharing your data. It's just easier you can instantly do it without any, it's just like if I need my medical records, I hit a button, I have them as soon as I hit the button. That kind of speed, but that doesn't happen right now. A couple calls have to be made. Some people do this. I pull some physical records. It's like, wow, you really kind of get down to it. And some offices are still running that low tech, and a lot of that can be fixed with some of this new technology. And if I had the magic wand, they'd all kind of be modernized in some way. And then having some system or universal system that the government works a little closer with the providers, because right now that's all over the place, and that's state by state. And I feel like we're kind of like I've traveled enough around the world, and our healthcare is more expensive by far than anybody else there is combined, probably, honestly. I mean, so there's and a lot of that's inefficiencies and administrative fees.
Right. The costs, what we pay for is not proportionate to the value that we may receive from it. And that's really
too. There's no standardization. Like, you might get charged $600 for an aspirin.
Yeah.
But you might get $1,200 at the hospital down the street. The other guys gave you a bargain.
Absolutely. And there's no transparency in that, right?
There's zero. And there's no justification of why that cost that or anything. It really seems to be a little bit of a money grab, and whatever they think they can get away with, they do. I mean, like, what's the oversight for controlling that? Is there anything? I'm not much in this field in that area, so I don't even know if there is.
Yeah, that's a topic for somebody else's subject matter expert. I got you. We'll let that one sit. I'm gonna just let that one sit off to the side, and we'll dig into that somewhere else. But Mac, I really appreciate you taking some time and giving an insight into technologies that in this industry we aren't necessarily looking at, but the impact and what they can mean is so transformative and so impactful that we need to understand it, and we need to figure out how to make your vision a reality and bring the universal system, because I think for me, that also sounds like it's a global system, right? It's not just a unique answer for one country. That is something that really is, and that the words you used, universal, is key.
Yeah, I mean, this could even be interplanetary if we kind of go on. Elon Musk gets lucky enough and puts enough Teslas on Mars. You never know.
Someday
they're going to probably have Dogecoin in those things. That he's a big fan of the stuff. If you know what that is, it's like a dog meme of the blockchain. But that's totally for another day. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Mac, thank you so much for joining me and sharing this perspective. This was a great conversation, and definitely something a little bit different than we typically talk about. I appreciate you so much.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
You have just experienced Break Everything with Lisa L. Levy. Critical conversations on directed disruption that makes a difference.